Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Nathan Boyd, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Lieutenant Commander Will Ross. We warmly welcome the family of Corporal Robert William Davidson, whose story will be told shortly. We also warmly welcome the contingent representing the Royal Australian Naval College, HMAS Creswell, Martin Division. We welcome the veterans that have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of the ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was a vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where family and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance of the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved. And here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who gave their lives for us in war and in operation for more than a century. But first, we present our lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Corporal Robert William Davidson. Robert Davidson was born on the 4th of December, 1891, the second child and eldest born to George and Mary Davidson. He and his 9 brothers and sisters grew up in Woolsthorpe, north of Warrnambool in Western Victoria. After completing his schooling, he worked as a motor mechanic. Davidson enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force in June 1915 and began training. In July, he sailed from Melbourne with reinforcements for the 21st Infantry Battalion. Arriving in Egypt, after a brief period of training, he transferred to the 24th Battalion before sailing for service on Gallipoli. Robert Davidson was the second member of the Davidson family to serve on Gallipoli. His younger brother William had been among the first Australian troops to land at Anzac Cove on the 25th of April 1915. After being wounded by a gunshot wound to the head during the Battle of Lone Pine in August, he was evacuated to Australia and would take no more part in the war. Robert Davidson arrived in Gallipoli in early September and began service in the trenches near Lone Pine. He had arrived at the front less than a month after his brother was wounded, and he served in the same sector in which his brother had been shot. He remained until early December, when he was evacuated to hospital in Egypt, suffering from an illness likely related to the increasingly cold and wintry conditions. Davidson returned to his unit in Egypt and in March 1916 sailed for France. In May of that year, Davidson's mother in Australia received a letter from England stating that a midshipman of the Royal Navy had found a wristwatch engraved with the words, "Presented to Private Robert Davidson on leaving for the front by friends of Woolsthorpe, Victoria, Australia." They had found it on Gallipoli, brought it to England and wrote to his family seeking to return at home. Davidson had evidently lost it in the terrible conditions towards the end of the campaign. In mid-July 1916, Davidson was promoted to Lance Corporal. Less than 2 weeks later, he participated in the 24th Battalion's first major action at the Western Front at Pozières. On 29 July, Davidson and his unit attacked the Pozières Heights shortly after midnight, facing heavy enemy fire and barbed wire defences. Davidson received shrapnel wounds to the head and arm and was evacuated to hospital. Less than 2 weeks later, after rejoining his unit on the 26th of August, he was wounded in action a second time, this time in the heavy fighting along the Pozières Heights near Mouquet Farm. Davidson received bomb wounds to the right leg and lower torso and was evacuated to England for treatment. Rejoining his unit in France on Christmas Day in 1916, Davidson and the 24th Battalion spent the next few months enduring the hardships of trench warfare in bleak winter conditions. On the 15th of February, he was promoted to corporal. On the 3rd of May 1917, Davidson and his battalion took part in the Second Battle of Bullecourt, a renewed British and Australian attempt to take a German strongpoint on a system of German defences called the Hindenburg Line. Although ultimately successful, the battle came at the expense of over 7,400 Australian casualties in 2 weeks. Davidson's battalion suffered terribly, suffering 80% casualties in one day, the 3rd of May. Davidson was killed on that day. In the midst of the early morning attack, he responded to a call for reinforcements to help a group of Australians fighting at an advanced position near a tramway cutting. Facing increasingly heavy fighting, the party were forced to retreat from their position. Davidson helped to provide covering fire as they pulled back. In the din of battle, Davidson was seen firing from the parapet of an old German church and calling out, "Fight to the finish, boys." The men successfully retreated, but Davidson became lost in the chaos of the battle. He was never seen again. Originally reported as missing in action, in the aftermath of the battle, he was awarded the Military Medal for conspicuous gallantry in the assault. It was not until December 1917 that he was confirmed to have been killed in action. He was 25 years old. With no known grave, his name is listed in the Australian National Memorial at Villers-Bretonneux, which lists the names of over 10,700 Australians killed on the Western Front who have no known final resting place. Corporal Robert William Davidson's name is listed on the Roll of Honour to my right, amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Corporal Robert William Davidson, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or at the low scrub of Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support for the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.